I've been invited to give a lecture, and our title is A Matter of Gravity, God, the Universe, and Stephen Hawking. Hawking is arguably the world's most famous living scientist. He was just ahead of me at Cambridge, and he's light years ahead of me in his intellectual capacity. He has recently retired from the Lucasian Professorship in Cambridge, a chair once held by Sir Isaac Newton, a chair that Hawking has occupied with great distinction. He has also been an outstanding symbol of fortitude, having suffered the ravages of motor neurone disease for over 40 years. During many of these, confined to a wheelchair, and his only means of communication, that famous electronic voice synthesizer known all over the world. Now, since his books and his research deal with the origin of the universe, it was inevitable, of course, that he should consider the matter of the existence of a divine creator. However, his book, A Brief History of Time, left this matter tantalizingly open. And it ended with a much-quoted statement that if physicists were to find a theory of everything, that is, a theory that unified the four fundamental forces of nature, we would know the mind of God. Now, in his latest book, The Grand Design, co-authored with Leonard Mlodinow, Hawking's reticence has completely disappeared, and he challenges belief in the divine creation of the universe. According to him, now it is the laws of physics and not the will of God that provide the real explanation as to how the universe came into being. The Big Bang, he argues, was the inevitable consequence of those laws. I quote, "Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing." Now, of course, his title, The Grand Design, will suggest for many people the existence of a grand designer, but that's exactly what the book is designed to deny. Hawking's grand conclusion is this: spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. It is not necessary to invoke God to light the blue touch paper and set the universe going. And of course, this all made headline news. And Hawking's stepping into this debate had the instant effect of increasing interest in it. And Stephen Hawking has, in a real sense, joined Richard Dawkins in the vanguard of the new atheism. Now, it is a grandiose claim to have banished God. After all, the majority of great scientists in the past have believed in him, and many still do. Were Galileo, Kepler, Newton, and Maxwell, to name but a few, really all wrong on the God question? And incidentally, that shows us the very fact that there are leading scientists who believe in God and there are leading scientists who do not, show us that the simplistic notion that science is somehow at war with belief in God is false. There is a conflict, ladies and gentlemen, but it lies much deeper in. It is a conflict of worldviews that come up to us from the ancient world. On the one hand, essentially the naturalistic worldview that says that the cosmos is all that exists, and therefore everything must be explicable reductionistically in terms of mass and energy. The other worldview is the theistic worldview that says the cosmos is not all that exists. It is created. There is a God who created it and maintains it. And you will find even today in the academy those worldviews colliding. And that's why there's such a vigorous discussion and great interest in it, because people of equal brilliance, one could say, stand on each side of the debate. Now, I wish to engage not so much with Hawking's science, but with what he claims to deduce from it. The Grand Design opens with a list of big questions. How can we understand the world in which we find ourselves? How does the universe behave? What is the nature of reality? Where did all this come from? Did the universe need a creator? And big questions like that, of course, excite the imagination with anticipation of hearing a world-class scientist say what he thinks of them. Now, if that is what we expect, we are in for a shock. For in his very next words, Hawking dismisses philosophy. Referring to his list of questions, he writes, traditionally these are questions for philosophy, but philosophy is dead. It has not kept up with modern developments in science, particularly in physics. As a result, scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery in our quest for knowledge. I find this startling. For Hawking's statement about philosophy is itself a philosophical statement. It is not a statement of science, it is a metaphysical statement about science. Therefore, because he claims philosophy is dead, he contradicts himself. Furthermore, the view that scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery smacks of scientism, the very widespread view that science is the only way to truth. Now, I want to come back to the main conclusion of the grand design. Because there is a law of gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing. And I want to concentrate on the word nothing because we do need to seriously think about nothing, ladies and gentlemen. What lies behind this is the well-established cosmological view that space-time had a beginning. There was nothing in the philosophical sense, non-being. There was no space-time, matter, etc. And then there was something. The cosmos is one of those things that came to be. And so Hawking is, as he says explicitly, trying to answer the famous question of Leibniz, why there is something rather than nothing. So the first question to ask is, what does Hawking mean when he says, because there is a law of gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing? Because there is a law of gravity, that is, there is something. And one presumes also that Hawking believes that gravity exists for the simple reason that an abstract law on its own would be vacuous with nothing to describe. The main issue for now, of course, is that gravity, or a law of gravity, is not nothing, if he is using that word in its usual philosophically correct sense of non-being, but he isn't. He later writes, we are a product of quantum fluctuations in the very early universe, referring to a quantum vacuum which is manifestly not nothing. So there's a contradiction directly. Because there is something, the universe will create itself out of nothing. But secondly, the logic doesn't improve when you analyze the next bit of the statement. The universe can and will create itself. If I say X creates Y, what do I mean? I mean that I presuppose the existence of X to explain the existence of Y. So if I say X creates X, I presuppose the existence of X in order to account for the existence of X. This is obviously self-contradictory, and so logically incoherent, even if I put X equal to the universe. To presuppose the existence of the universe to account for the existence of the universe sounds like something out of Alice in Wonderland, not science. Now, it's very seldom that one finds in one statement two distinct levels of contradiction, but Hawking appears to have discovered one. He says that the universe comes from a nothing that turns out to be a something, and then he says the universe creates itself. But that is not all. His notion that a law of nature, gravity, explains the existence of the universe is also contradictory, since a law of nature depends on the prior existence of the nature it purports to describe. More on this anon. So it would appear to me that the central assertion of his book probably involves a triple self-contradiction. And philosophers might just be tempted to comment, that is what comes of saying philosophy is dead. Now, what all this goes to show is that nonsense remains nonsense even when talked by world-class physicists. What serves to obscure the illogicality of such statements is the fact that they are made by famous scientists. And the general public, not surprisingly, assumes that they are statements of science and take them on authority. That is why it is very important in this whole discussion to realize that statements by a scientist, including me, are not necessarily statements of science. Now, what is being confused here are two very different things. A supernatural being is an agent who does something. In the case of the God of the Bible, he is a personal agent. Dismissing such agency, Hawking ascribes creative power to physical law, but physical law is not an agent. This is a category mistake. He is confusing two entirely different kinds of entity, physical law and personal agency, so that the choice that he sets us before is between false alternatives. Because when it comes to the matter of explanation, ladies and gentlemen, there are different levels of explanation. God is an explanation of the universe, but not the same type of explanation, nor in competition with the kind of explanation given by physics and cosmology. Suppose, to make things clearer, I replace the universe by a jet engine. And there's sitting in front of us a jet engine. And I say, let's explain this. And somebody said, well, I can explain it in terms of the basic laws of physics and engineering. Wonderful. Somebody else says, I can explain it by telling you that Sir Frank Whittle invented it. Now, to suggest that those two explanations compete with one another or contradict one another is nonsense. Sir Frank Whittle is an explanation for the existence of the jet engine. The laws of turbocompression and combustion are an explanation of how it works, and the two kinds of explanation, one in terms of law and mechanism and the other in terms of agency, do not conflict, but they complement one another. And it is exactly the same, I would suggest, with explanations of the universe. And Isaac Newton saw that. When he discovered his law of gravitation, he didn't make Hawking's mistake. He didn't say, now that I've got the law of gravitation, I don't need God. No, he did the exact opposite. He wrote Principia Mathematica, the most famous book in the whole history of science, explicitly expressing the hope that it would persuade the thinking man to believe in God. The laws of physics can explain how the jet engine works, but not how it came to exist in the first place. And it's self-evident that a jet engine couldn't be created by the laws of physics on their own. It needed the intelligence and creative engineering work of Whittle. But indeed, come to think of it, the laws of physics plus Whittle could not actually produce a jet engine on their own. There also needed to be some material subject to those laws that could be worked on by Whittle. Matter may be humble stuff, but it is not produced by laws. And so this can help us clear up a further misunderstanding. Science, according to many scientists, concentrates essentially on material causation. How does the jet engine work? It also asks the why question regarding function. Why is this valve here or that microprocessor there? But it does not ask the why question of purpose. Why was the jet engine built? What is important here is that Sir Frank Whittle does not himself appear in the scientific account. To quote Laplace, when we're giving the scientific account of a jet engine, we have no need of the hypothesis of Frank Whittle. But if we were asking the question, how is it that the jet engine came to exist in the first place, we would have to mention Frank Whittle. Mathematical laws are what? They are a description of what normally happens under certain given conditions. This is certainly obvious from the very first example that Hawking gives of physical law. The sun rises in the east. But it is surely obvious that this law doesn't create the sun nor the earth with east and west. The law is descriptive and predictive, but it is not creative. Similarly, Newton's law of gravitation does not even create gravity or the matter on which gravity acts. Newton's laws of motion never caused a billiard ball to race across the green table in the entire history of the universe. People with cues do that. The laws can help us analyze the motion, but they cannot cause the motion. And that is a thing that it seems to me to be often missed by, for instance, Paul Davies, a physicist with whom I've had a fascinating radio debate. He said, I've never liked the idea of divine tinkering. For me, it's much more inspiring to believe that a set of mathematical laws can be so clever as to bring all these things into being. But mathematical laws bringing them into being? Well, in the world in which most of us live, the simple law of arithmetic by itself, 1 + 1 = 2, never brought anything into being. It certainly has never put any money into my bank account. If I put 100,000 rand and later another 100,000 rand into my bank, the laws of arithmetic will rationally explain how it is I now have 200,000 rand in the bank. But if I never put any money into the bank itself and simply leave it to the laws of arithmetic to bring money into being in my bank account, I shall remain permanently bankrupt. I wonder, do some bankers understand this question? C.S. Lewis grasped this with characteristic clarity. Of the laws of nature, he writes, they produce no events. They state the pattern to which every event, if only it can be induced to happen, must conform. Just as the rules of arithmetic state the pattern to which all transactions with money must conform, if only you can get a hold of some money. The world of naturalism, in which clever mathematical laws all by themselves bring the universe and life into existence, is pure science fiction. Theories and laws do not bring mass energy into existence. So Hawking has signally failed, and so has Krauss, to answer the question with which they set out to answer: why is there something rather than nothing? Now, like every other physicist, Hawking is confronted with powerful evidence of design in the universe, and he admits it. Our universe and its laws appear to have a design that both is tailor-made to support us, and if we are to exist, leaves little room for alteration. That is not easily explained, and raises the natural question of why it is this way. The discovery relatively recently of the extreme fine-tuning of so many of the laws of nature could lead at least some of us back to the old idea that this grand design is the work of some grand designer. That is not the answer of modern science. Our universe seems to be one of many, each with different laws. Now, clearly, Hawking recognizes a grand design. He's got almost an entire chapter devoted to these spectacular examples of fine-tuning of both the laws of nature and the constants associated with fundamental physics. The evidence he gives is impressive and certainly fits in with what he calls the old idea that this grand design is the work of some grand designer. Of course it does. It fits like a glove, because there actually is a grand designer. The idea of a grand designer is certainly old, but the important question to ask is not its age, but whether it's true or not. Simply to say it's old can give the erroneous impression that what is old is necessarily false and has been superseded. And secondly, it can give the further erroneous impression that no one holds it today. But some of the finest minds in science do hold it, including some of Hawking's collaborators. The conviction that there is a grand designer, God the Creator, is held by millions, if not billions of people. Vastly more than those who hold the atheist alternative, though of course these things are not to be decided on statistics. It is, ladies and gentlemen, ironic that Stephen Hawking, in attacking religion, feel compelled to put so much emphasis on the Big Bang theory, a theory originally suggested, incidentally, by a Catholic priest, Georges Lebaitre. Because even if the non-believers don't like it, it resonates powerfully with the Christian narrative of creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That is why, before the Big Bang gained currency, so many scientists, including the then editor of Nature, John Maddox, and I remember it very well in the 1960s, were keen to dismiss it since it seemed to support the Bible story. Some still, like Fred Hoyle, clung to Aristotle's view of the eternal universe without beginning or end. But this theory and later variants of it are now widely discredited. The Bible, which has been quietly asserting for millennia that there was a beginning, has proved to be correct. Now, much of the rationale behind Stephen Hawking's arguments lies in the idea that there's a deep-seated conflict between science and faith in God. This is not a discord that I recognize. For me, as a Christian believer, the beauty of the scientific laws reinforces my faith in an intelligent divine creator. The more I understand science, the more my faith in God is confirmed because of my wonder at the breadth and sophistication and integrity of his creation. In fact, The flourishing of science, modern science, in the 16th and 17th centuries under men like Galileo, Kepler, and Newton occurred precisely because of their conviction that the laws of nature that were then being discovered and defined reflected the existence of a divine lawgiver. That, to my mind, is fascinating. For instance, we only have to see a few letters of the alphabet spelling our name in the sand at the coast here to recognize at once the work of an intelligent agent. And I find it interesting, ladies and gentlemen, that just a few letters of our name written in a beach immediately cause us to argue upwards to intelligence. We don't necessarily know all the processes that have been involved to get those letters in the sand, but because of their semiotic nature, because they encapsulate information, we deduce that intelligence must be involved at some stage. That's with just the few letters of our name. But when we observe the bewildering complexity of the human genome with its 3.5 billion letters in that 4-letter chemical alphabet, all in the right order, with the same kind of semiotic dimension coding for the proteins, I find it rather curious that people, instead of inferring that intelligence must be involved, whatever other natural processes are, immediately discount what they would never discount under any other circumstances. As a scientist, I myself find that by far the most compelling explanation is that behind the universe there is a grand designer of infinite wisdom and intelligence. It is my science, ladies and gentlemen, and not simply my faith in God, that tells me that it makes perfect sense to say about our universe, in terms of its ultimate explanation, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things came to be through him. Thank you very much indeed.